Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, or good evenings for some of you somewhere in the world. Um, Monday of week 12. If you get yourself ready, open your notes page, take a deep breath and a stretch, laugh and smile, and just bring your full self into presence for where you are today. We're going to start with a couple of announcements, and here goes. It's coming time for new TAs, for me to have conversations with any of you that are interested in being a TA for BiSci 3. And so the way that that works is that I will send out a doodle poll link in Canvas messages tomorrow so that you can sign up for slots. They're half-hour slots and will happen over the course of the next 3 or 4 weeks. So sign up for a slot that works for you, and it'll be you and me and your TA if you so choose to have them join into our conversation. That's delightful. And we just have a conversation about what makes you interested in being a TA. And I need 41 TAs. So the other piece that you need to know is that that training happens in the following semester. So you would train during fall of 2021, for which you earn credit, and then you would be a TA in the spring of 2022. And there's also credit involved for being a TA. So if you have questions, please sign up for an interview and then come and chat with me, and I'll look forward to meeting more of you. That's always a fun time for me. So that's coming. Kiss the Ground, please make sure that you've watched or that you've marked your calendar for this Wednesday, April 14th at 7 o'clock at my Zoom connection. You can take a quick screenshot of this so that you have the information. My Zoom information is also in the syllabus, so you have that as an option as well. Wednesday, April 14th, 7 o'clock at my Zoom. You have to be present for the movie and then also for the conversation afterward to earn your 5 points. Another announcement that I sent in Canvas messaging is about another extra credit opportunity to listen to or read the essay by Robin Wall Kimmerer. It relates to something that I'll mention today in class, and then I'll be talking again in the coming weeks about the topic of that essay. So if you go to the website, you can listen to it there, you can read it, and then please follow all of the instructions that I've given in order to earn your extra credit points for that assignment. And then the final announcement is please remember the field experience that's also coming up Sunday, April 18th. You will have a list of choices of things to do outside. And then you'll have your adventures, and then you'll be reporting in and meeting with your lab via Zoom at 7 o'clock on Sunday, April 18th. There will be no lab then on Friday, April 16th. So no lab on Friday, just the adventure, the field experience on Sunday. So that's coming, all kinds of exciting things coming up. And so then for what we are diving into today, first I need to start with this. And please pardon, it feels like a very monologue kind of thing, but I really understand that this is an interesting time for you. I've been there, and it's not easy. You're in this middle place. You're stuck in between being a kid and a grown-up, and partly because you are likely trying to find you. And what does that mean? That's hard. It's a hard time. And while you're trying to find you, there are influential people in your life who are telling you what you should do and be, that are pushing and prodding you, that want you to do something important with your life. They're pushing you to make decisions, or they're maybe even making decisions for you. I remember so clearly being in your shoes Those people have good intentions. They want you to grow up. You are in college, right? You should grow up. Well, but it doesn't work like that. So there's this tension. So who do you listen to? Do you listen to yourself? Do you listen to those outside people that are important to you? How do you find your way? And actually, nobody knows what's right for you except you. And it's okay. It is okay if you don't know what's right for you right now either. I fully and completely believe that. What I also believe is that this class opens doors. It opens ideas that we, the TAs and the LCs and myself, we're not pushing you to believe like we do, but we're pushing you to figure out what you believe and why you believe it. And we don't expect answers from you, but just the idea that you're reflecting, the idea that you're doing that metacognition stuff. And through all this stuff, you're going to come up with those things that are the non-negotiables that you really want to do and be in life, ways that you want to be. Those are the main things. And yet life is fluid, ever changing. So as we go through part 3 here, there will be a lot of opportunity for choice. And how you make those choices is a reflection of who you are and what you believe and what you understand. And those things take time to figure out. And that's okay. So this is where we are in part 3 of just like shelter, or excuse me, just like food, shelter is about 1/3 of our ecological footprint. And in my experience, sometimes it's difficult for all of you to consider options about shelter because many of you are living in dorm rooms or apartments, and you have to have a roommate or 5 or 6 of them. And you don't have control over what kind of light bulbs the management is using. You don't have control over how hot or how cold it is in your apartment. And also, I've heard that many of you that are in those kind of situations also just want to have space by yourself. Quiet space, alone space, that you don't get that all the time when you need it. And I certainly get that. So as we think about shelter, what I'm asking you to do is to listen for changes that you can make right now. But I'm also listening, or I ask you to listen for changes that you can make in the future when you have more power of choice. So this question, how might you reduce your footprint while improving your quality of life? What a cool concept that is, because you're creating the best world for you, as well as treating Earth with the care and attention. So the basic needs of living things, food, clean water, clean air, shelter, those are the things that we need to survive. And survive is defined as continue to live or exist, especially in the spite of danger or hardship. So think about our ancestors 20,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago, 60,000 years ago, that 500 generations, 50,000 generations before us. Our skin protects us from so much. It is our basic shelter. It is the most ancient shelter that helped our ancestors and us to survive, protects us from the outside world. And we also then have used animal skins over our own skin as the next shelter. And then constructing shelters out of animal skins. And so this is our history. This is where we've come from. But now we've evolved, or time has changed things. And And our shelters are lots of different things. If you consider people from around the world. So this one is a home in the country of Mali. And this isn't 10,000 years ago. It's a color photograph. This was taken in 1993. This is a picture of a family in Mali with all of their belongings. So here, think about the difference between survive and thrive. The average life expectancy in Mali is 48 years. This is their shelter. So I'd like you to take a moment and really look at this picture and talk with your group about these questions. What do you see in this picture that is similar to where you grew up? What is different? What are you curious about? What inspires you? So take a moment to really check this out. I'm going to need to stop the share for just a moment while you're talking, and then I'll bring it right back up again. So hold on, but hold those questions and hold this picture in your mind, and it'll be back in just a moment. All right, so this was Mali. Let's do the same thing again with this picture. This is a home in Mongolia. They are nomadic peoples. And so you can see that this house is collapsible so that they can move it away to wherever the next grazing land is for their sheep. Um, what do you see in this picture that's the same as where you grew up or similar? What's different? What are you curious about? What are you inspired by? The life expectancy in Mongolia is 62 years, just for your reference, thinking about surviving and thriving. So take a couple moments to look at this and talk about this. It's interesting to think about and speculate what their lives are like. Um, I'm always inspired in this picture by all the color and their huge smiles. I think that that inspires me about this picture. And thank you for sharing what you're observing in your groups. Um, and then there's this. This is an American home. It's mine, in fact, my home, built in the mid 1800s, the mid 1800s. So what's happened over time and what's happened in our culture? How has it come to be, the evolution of what we need? So planning for today's class made me really think about this concept of surviving versus thriving. Remember that surviving is to continue to live or exist, especially in spite of danger and hardship. To thrive is to grow or develop well or vigorously, to prosper and flourish. And this is where we're all really trying to get to, right? All trying to find this place where we're able to prosper and flourish and grow and be and smile and celebrate. And so here in part 3, we're talking specifically about our choices. How can my choices lead to a reduced use of resources and improve my quality of life? How can I thrive and not be so hard on our planet? This doesn't just apply to the shelter lecture. If you think back to the food lecture, my body needs calories to survive. That's what it really comes down to. And potato chips have calories, but do potato chips help me thrive? What kind of foods can I eat that help me to thrive? How does eating whole foods or non-processed foods straight from the ground make me feel compared to when I eat those potato chips? Student recently told me of his mom's gardens and the way that he talked about them, the way that he smiled and the way that he said that they made him feel. It was clear that they were helping him to thrive, and they were helping the world around him to thrive. For the planet, it's better. So how can we apply this same principle to shelter? Have a shelter that meets my needs, helps me flourish, and is better for the planet. So here's where we've come from. So in 1950, average floor area of a home was around 1,000 square feet. And there were an average of 3 to 4 kids per family in that time. Then 1970 with the average floor area of 1,500 square feet. And now we're averaging a solid 3 kids per family. And then in 2000, we're down to 2 kids per family and an average floor area of 2,200 square feet. And now houses that are being built, the average square footage is 2,600 feet. And now we're down to typically 1 to 2 kids per family on average. And actually, many homes that are being built today are even more. 10% of homes today are built over 4,000 square feet. So fewer people per house and more square footage than ever before. So how is it that this space, having this space, impacts us? Why don't you take 2 minutes to think about that, to share with your group? When you have your own space, what's the shift? So some of you are pointing out how having more space impacts our relationships on the other people that live in the home. When we each have our own room and we each have our own space, there's something good about being able to escape. And yet it does impact how the family dynamic works. So this book, it was just released actually in the spring of 2020, was really helpful for me in navigating where we are in class, as well as in this place in time on Earth. And I found this tidbit in this book, this video that I'd like to show you.
American cities have fundamentally altered how they built themselves over the last 60 years. And to me, the place that it really started was the 1939 World's Fair. At what was the most successful World's Fair in history, the most successful exhibit was one called Futurama.
To help us get a glimpse into the future of this unfinished world of ours, there has been created for the New York World's Fair a thought-provoking exhibit of the developments ahead of us. A vivid tribute to the American scheme of living. Come, let's travel into the future. What will we see?
Futurama portrayed the future of the city in that distant year 1960.
The world we are now seeing is a vision, an artistic conception which may undergo many changes as it develops into the great realities of tomorrow.
And it portrayed a city that was car-driven, lots of open spaces. You could live in the country and drive to your job downtown, and you'd have the best of two worlds.
Over space, man has begun to win victory.
Suburban splendor and urban excitement. Not coincidentally, Futurama was sponsored by General Motors, and they were promoting what we wanted. And it's my sense that 1939, just before the war, the clouds are looming over Europe. We go off to war, and we have this image that's mulling in our minds, and we come back and we implement Futurama.
15 million GIs came back from the war, clamoring for new homes and a piece of land in the country. Almost overnight, suburbia was born.
There was a whole new idea about American communities. And my father was a part of that because he was a builder. And so in our area in Kansas City, Missouri, his employer, the J.C. Nichols Company, was finishing a home a day for years following the Second World War. And this was all about a new, hopeful American dream.
So isn't that fascinating? The world of suburbia was a story in somebody's mind, somebody at General Motors. And now think about what we have. The most ecological harmful form of land settlement ever invented. Space for each house, a yard for each family, and how much space? What is it that we really need? What is it that we need to thrive as humans? And where does our footprint come in? The more land we own, farther from other houses, the farther we have to drive to get to the places that we need to go, the more space that we use to live in, the more resources it requires to build those houses, the more energy it takes to heat and cool, the more furnishings that you need to own to fill that big space, the more cleaning and maintaining and organizing of all of that stuff, the bigger the footprint, the more money is spent. You may argue that new homes are more efficient than older homes, but building them generates plenty of carbon dioxide, getting all of the supplies made and transported to the site. And the new homes are often larger, so yes, they might be more efficient, but it's a bigger space that needs to be heated and cooled. The smaller the house, the smaller the footprint. From the beginning of the project until the very end of the project, through the entire life of the house. So we're used to thinking of an economy as the primary indicator of how we're performing as a species. Our usual thinking is that more economic growth is good, less is bad. Negative growth or recession is a disaster. So it's measured by the gross domestic product, the market value of goods and services produced in a year. And the idea that this GDP, gross domestic product, can be endless is how economists are thinking often. Um, it becomes self-perpetuating as the media and politicians and business leaders and others constantly refer to it as second nature. But the GDP is actually a poor marker of what human beings need to thrive. Doesn't take into consideration the impacts of pollution or inequality or prioritizing the value of health, education, or even happiness. So, what does this? It also places no value on the actions that regenerate discarded lands or that bring oceans back to health. So there's a lot missing when we're just measuring things by the GDP. So I want you to use your imagination. Just throw back to like kid imagination, if you would, as well as what you know now. So it's like your whole life experience. And I'd like you to imagine this. You have $10,000 to build a home. $10,000. Where would it be? How big would it be? What materials would you use? Where would you get the materials? Who would design it? What kind of design? Who would build it? And while you're doing that, I want you to think about your main thing. What is it that, how does that play in? Make a sketch, share your ideas with your group, and be creative. I'm going to give you a few minutes for this. See what you can come up with. So this is one of those times where it's hard for me to have a big class because I'm so curious about what you came up with. I want to hear from each and every one of you to see what you discovered. There are possibilities here. Just using a little creativity, resourcefulness, those are all characteristics that we have as humans. This is Jess and Dan. This is their 128 square foot house. It's self-built. They designed it in the program called SketchUp. They built it with them by themselves with materials that they either could salvage from other places or had minimal expense. They have no mortgage. This is a huge point. People often take 20 to 30 years to pay off a mortgage. It's often 1/3 of your income or more that goes to your mortgage. To have no mortgage is huge. Their operating expenses are $200 a month. And they own less stuff. They don't have to invest. There's not space to keep buying more stuff. They have to make conscious decisions about their needs and their wants. You probably have heard about this, the tiny house movement. This family, the Castle family, they moved from a 2,000 square foot house into this 267 square foot house. It's a husband, a wife, 2 kids, and a dog. And now they thrive with just one income. Instead of both parents having to work, they can support their home on one income. And therefore they have more family time together. We're more content, more colorful, more outdoorsy, more rooted, more united, more adventurous, more homey, more resourceful, more creative, more experienced, more trusting, more delighted, more fulfilled, is a quote from the mom. She makes a really valuable point in her statement about being more outdoorsy. According to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, the average American spends over 90% of their lifetime indoors, buildings and automobiles. What does that mean? Well, the concentrations of some pollutants are sometimes 2 to 5 times higher inside than outside. The fact that we get colds and flus and other things, we're sharing germs more easily because we're such inside creatures. Higher concentrations of airborne pollutants, including those germs. Being outside is linked to better moods and better outlooks on life. And so I thought that this might be interesting to you. This is another tiny house. And here's a little tour. So if you really wonder how this works, I thought this was pretty great.
This is my tiny house. Come on in. Just inside the front door, I've got these 2 puffy chairs flanking this little boat fireplace. It's a very tiny fireplace, but it's a tiny house. Closet storage, my cabinet space below this desk. It's computer storage space, and there's a little table down here. When I pull this table out, believe it or not, as long as I have tiny plates, it seats 4 people. Like that. Here in the kitchen, I've got a bar sink, a double burner stove, a little refrigerator, and a toaster oven. The bathroom is the shower. So when I want to take a shower, the nozzle is on the ceiling and everything would get wet, except for I've got these little sliding doors that keep things dry. And I can put this plastic curtain in here over the toilet, which is right down here. Above the kitchen, I've got access to the loft. That's where I sleep. So the loft is nothing more than storage and sleeping. I've got all the storage at this end, and then at this end, I've got the sleeping with a bed. It sleeps 2 really comfortably. So this is my bed. And I've got a window at this end and a fan vent behind the shelves at the others, so that if it ever gets hot, I can just turn this whole thing into a wind tunnel. This is the third of 3 tiny houses that I've lived in. They've all been less than 100 square feet, and I've been doing this for over 10 years now. The reason why I've done it, or I should say the reasons why, are mostly just because I don't like vacuuming and dusting and taking care of a lot of stuff that I'm not really using. And besides that, there's the environmental aspect of the whole thing. I don't like to think that I'm spewing a bunch of extra greenhouse gases into the environment or consuming a lot of non-renewable resources just for the sake of wasted space.
Pretty cool. I guess I've always been a girl who loves clubhouses and forts. And that's what this kind of reminds me of, having all the things and the places, the special spots. Living in a fort seems pretty great. This is a cob house. It cost $3,000 to build. And it's in an eco-village, which means that the people that live in an eco-village, they share their resources of time as well as their physical things. They have a certain awareness for the environment and the community. And there's a global network of eco-villages all over the world. And so if this is something that intrigues you, that's a possibility. Go out and explore it. But we can also do other things. How can we create thriving villages in the place where we live? What can we do for each other? What about sharing? That's something that we learn from the very moments that we start growing up. As kids, we learn how to share, but this practice seems to fade as we become adults. And what happens is that our houses become full of our own stuff, where we need garages and attics and basements and closets and storage units that get transformed into cluttered warehouses of stuff. When we need something, our tendency is to go out and buy it. So what can we do if we borrow stuff from neighbors? We could share tools and gadgets and skills. We could organize a community swap. We could start a things library. And this is where this idea of the gift economy comes in, is that gift economy represents a shift from consumption to contribution, from transaction to trust, from scarcity to abundance, and from isolation to community. Charles Eisenstein, who wrote this quote, also said, "In a gift economy, the more you give, the richer you are." He points out that money is an agreement. It's a man-made invention. Scarcity is built into the money system that throws people automatically into competition. Many basic human needs are not being met this way. So being able to create a power tool library in your neighborhood, or even having a few friends that you share things with, is really valuable. It creates those kind of connections. I know that if I need a tile saw, then I can text my neighbor Sarah and she can hand it over the fence or she can set it on my porch. It's pretty easy. If I want the belt sander, then I know John has one and I can just borrow it. I don't need to go and buy myself a belt sander. And so taking care of and being responsible for each other's things creates trust and builds community. Life is a matter of choices, and every choice you make makes you. This might be worth writing down. Think back to that beginning. This is the idea of thinking about where you are right now in your lives. Exploration and consideration. My algebra teacher in high school said all the time, use what you have to get what you need. And of course, he was talking about solving for X. But the idea that I use this phrase in so many other ways over the course of my life. So what do you need to thrive? I know we're short on time, but take a moment and think about this with your group. What do you need to thrive? So think back to that picture of my house. I do love my house in many ways, but there's a flip side. It's big and it's full of stuff. It costs more than I really want to be spending to heat it, to take care of it. There are repairs and maintenance that constantly need to be done. And when I bought it, at that point in my life, I really thought that's what I needed to thrive. And so I'm not in a position right now to move or to change that part of my story. And so I make the best of it. I make the best of it. I make the choices that I can make, the wisest choices that I can make, considering all the things that I know. And then I can celebrate thriving. So keep considering this idea. And for this week, for Pack Back, please write your own prompt and answer it. Please make certain that it's directly tied to the themes of BISI and what we're actively engaging with. And I look forward to reading what you're writing. What are you curious about? So thanks very much for being with me today. I hope that you all have a beautiful day. And please take time for yourselves and enjoy our Wednesday off.